Hello, beautiful being. Welcome or welcome back to the Heart of Truth podcast. So, in light of the amplified, super intense, and incessant solar flares and solar plasma energy, and the attenuating ascension symptoms that so many have been experiencing in this very potent time of alchemy and transformation, I decided it was high time to delve a little deeper into ascension, what it really is, because I use the term embodied ascension a fair amount. And I really want to get into the actual biology of ascension and cellular transformation. So I was already kind of percolating these ideas in my mind. And the other day, somebody asked me what my thoughts were on the rapture. And immediately my mind went to this subject, the biology of ascension, cellular transformation, how it's all a cellular process. The rapture is not just a spiritual state. And we're going to get deep into how these processes work and what is really going on in our physical body, in the body temple. The body is the temple for our spirit, for our soul to experience this magical playground called Earth, or this chaos called life at this given point in time of the mass collective awakening. So, what is happening when we experience these symptoms is something that I feel I've touched on before, but we're going to actually take it another layer deeper and actually look at the nitty-gritty of the biology underlying all of this. And then bring in this idea of the rapture, which I have not personally addressed. And I'm really excited to dive into this subject because I am historically a bio nerd, actually. Back in high school, I literally won state awards for my performance in science, specifically in the field of biology. I was that much of a nerd. If you're familiar with mathletes, I was basically on the science version of that. And it was actually begrudgingly on my part. I did not want to be such a science nerd, but I tested into it and I had no choice because it was an honor. And I wound up teaching biology and math and all sorts of fun subjects in my 20s. So I realized that was actually beautiful preparation for me to step into this role. It's like in hindsight is 2020, right? We can see how our life often leads us to our soul mission, even if at the time it might look a little chaotic or meandering, as mine most certainly did all throughout my 20s. But it all was really helping me to integrate the different aspects of the 3D processes that are occurring as we move through this journey and to really give me that broader perspective as well. So there is this process that I kind of feel one term for it could be somatic divinization. We're bringing divinity into the body, into the cells. So what does that look like? How does this register in the nervous system, in the fascia, in the biofield, and in the cells? So this is what we're going to look at. So when we look at the rapture itself, it is not this disembodied state where we go up and out when it's really truly authentic and organic. It's actually a very physiological process, and it's quite fascinating when you really begin to break it down and look at the biology. So I hope you're ready to put a little bit of your nerd hat on if you're as curious as I am to get into the biology of what this process of awakening and ascension is really about. So we're going to look at the biology, the energetics, and the esoteric lens to really bring the full picture together. So, this is very much what I see as the second coming of Christ occurring within our body temples, because we are anchoring this consciousness, but the consciousness is really a frequency of being. And in the whole dissolving the veil process, this is what I started speaking into, is the light essentially compressing our systems to clear, to purge the density. And this is why we feel all the physical symptoms. So let's take it a layer deeper and look at light body restoration, what the heck that actually is, and embodying our higher self. So this isn't really about becoming more spiritual. It's actually about becoming more you, because who you really are is so much bigger than this physical body, than the ego identities and labels, than this 3D experience, right? So as we go through this process, it's really higher self embodiment. And this process is very much light body restoration. And that is essentially, in a nutshell, clearing out all the density and trauma that creates overlays that prevent us from being the fullness of who we really are. So it's simple in essence, but as we all know, this is not an easy process. Simple, easy, very different. So how do we navigate this with grace and ease? It really helps to understand the biology, the physiology of what is actually occurring, because awakening, again, is not just of our consciousness, of our mind. It's the awakening of our cells to our divinity. So the way that I see it is true ascension is not about leaving the body. It is about creating more coherence within the body temple to hold that frequency of consciousness at a higher bandwidth, if you will. So when we look at the cells, when we look at the biology of the cells, there's literally a mitochondrial shift. There's an upshift, an uptick in the creation of ATP, the molecule of energy. Fascia becomes more liquid crystalline. So when we talk about the crystalline light body, this is literally happening in our physical being, is it's anchoring more of these crystalline codes as far as the actual cellular matrix becoming more crystalline. The nervous system itself becomes more coherent. A lot of people talk about coherent. I think I said coherence. The nervous system becomes more coherent. So a lot of people talk about nervous system regulation. But another way to look at this is creating coherence in the nervous system itself. So then we get into the layer of how do we do that? Well, this typically brings us into the layer of trauma. So if there's patterns in the light body holding, the light body holds these energetic patterns that attract more situations until we do the healing work, right? So if there is a trauma pattern in the light body, we then can defragmentize that, is one way to look at it, and we can alchemize, transmute, integrate the trauma. And that's what helps to restore, to rebuild the light body. So when I talk about light body restoration, it's very much about clearing these patterns of density and distortion that are rooted in trauma. And then we can actually look at the electrical currents within the body, restoring piezoelectric currents. So looking at the meridians and the cells themselves having that electrical current fully radiant. I don't know, radiant is the word that came to mind, because what we're doing is we're actually bringing the light codes into the cells, and this electrical current radiates light. So then we have this heart-brain coherence or heart-brain entrainment that begins to amplify, where the brain is in service to the heart. And we're going to get into the vagus nerve in a moment we're going to look at that in a deeper dive. So then hormones become fully balanced as well. So again, this is physiology. This is biology. Your cells must change or the consciousness can't really hold. The cells must have the capacity. We talk about nervous system capacity, but but the cells must also have that capacity to hold that level of consciousness or frequency that is being anchored through these solar plasma light codes. So, how do we do this is something that we'll get into in a little bit more depth, but this is, again, a process of literal cellular transformation. So, diving deeper into the nervous system component now. So, nervous system integration, regulation is obviously a huge topic of conversation, and not just the spiritual awakening community, but it is everywhere in the wellness sphere at this point, to the point where it's almost overdone and it's a lot of talk without people really anchoring it. But again, this is a process of embodiment. How do we embody? I talk about embodied ascension. Well, embodiment is literally about being in the body, restoring the body temple to its most organic crystalline template, to its original essence that is pure, whole, and holy. And that is basically pristine health. It really is as simple as really just focusing on your baseline health as the foundation. And when you focus on your health, then your body has more capacity to begin to hold these light codes, these light frequencies. And, depending on how your journey starts, it starts in so many ways for so many people. It's different, right? But there's usually some kind of trigger, some kind of spark. Often it is rock bottom, some kind of trauma or chaos in itself. But there is this moment where sometimes people just awaken. But how do they integrate that? We're being called to go deeper into the body. So, however people are coming at this, the body is the key because it is the temple for all of this. It is the vessel for all of this to occur. So, nervous system regulation is really important. And the vagus nerve is really coming to the fore to anchor into how to really do this because it is called the soul nerve. It is the wandering nerve. It's the longest cranial nerve, and it wanders down from the brain all the way down to the intestines. And so the tentacles of this nerve, if you've ever seen a picture, do you remember Biology 101? The nerve cells have all these dendrites, right? They look kind of like tentacles. And so the tentacles of the nerve itself, they reach into most parts of the body. So think the throat, the lungs, the heart, the stomach, liver, spleen, pancreas, kidney, gut, both the large and the small intestines. So we're talking about all our major vital organs. And when we think about it from that perspective, the soul nerve kind of becomes then the master nerve as well. So the vagal pathway is bidirectional. So 80% of the information goes from the body to the brain, and just 20% from the brain to the body. A lot of people will center that in the heart itself. 80% of information sent from the heart to the brain. And a lot of it is via the vagus nerve. So essentially, this is the foundation of the gut-brain connection, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. So this is how the communication between the gut and the brain occurs. So they use neurotransmitters, like serotonin and glutamate and so on. And the gut hormones, it creates communication pathways in essence. So all of these hormones and neurotransmitters, they play vital roles in sleep, mood, pain, stress, hunger. So we can see very clearly how the body is one very beautiful, miraculous, coherent system. So if one aspect of the nervous system specifically is out of whack, if it's holding on to trauma, this can have a cascade effect in our physical health as well as our mental well-being. So the vagus nerve really does regulate all of the body's basic functioning, like breathing, heartbeat, even dilation of the eyes. So if this nerve isn't flowing and functioning in optimal capacity, then we can see how this can really impact our lived reality. So, what makes this nerve extra fascinating is that the communication doesn't just happen within our own personal biological system. It also communicates from one person to another. So, it's picking up on signals from the environment, on information sent by the other person's physical system, their biological system. So this is how you pick up on somebody's vibes, basically. So this soul nerve really is unifying the entire nervous system as well as connecting us to the greater web of life that surrounds us by processing all of the sensory information coming into us from our environment and in essence informing us how to respond to our environment to keep us safe, to keep us also connected. It's like this person is safe and it will create more connection in your life. And they will help bring more joy and love and stability and less stress, right? But then, your nervous system might pick up the opposite signal from somebody else or a different environmental stressor and be like, alert, alert, stay away from that. It's not going to be for your highest good. So, research into the vagus nerve is really quite new. It's, a couple decades old, give or take at this point, right? But this is also known as the trauma response nerve. So here is that intimate connection with the work that so many people are doing on the spiritual path, that deeper shadow work and trauma integration. So the vagus nerve receives fight, flee, or freeze messages from the brainstem. And the brainstem, just to remind you, is like the survival brain. It's the lizard brain, and it helps the rest of the body to prepare to engage in the survival responses like freeze, flight, fight, right? So it prepares you to take that action as needed for survival, but it can also receive and spread the message that, yes, you're actually safe now. And then it helps to restore regular functions so you can relax. Now, I actually took a psychology of trauma course in my senior year of college because I had actually been in a car accident that flipped over in the first half of my senior year, like just weeks after school started, the semester started. And I was obviously very intrigued to learn more about the psychology of trauma because my body, I miraculously walked out and I survived. And, when we're talking it flipped over, it was literally upside down when the car landed. But I walked out, but I had minor injuries in the grand scheme, but one of the symptoms that I was experiencing was a little PTSD of being in a car as a passenger, especially if it was at night and the roads were wet, yada, yada, right? So I would like cling to the car. So I wanted to learn more about trauma in the body. And I don't remember learning about the vagus nerve. I don't remember learning about trauma in the body. And maybe I was still a little too dissociated to really integrate the information in a meaningful manner. But I have to say, I don't think that a lot of, because I have also since read The Body Keeps the Score, one of the classics out there in this realm. And I don't remember learning most of that in that course. And yeah, that was in the mid later 2000s. So we're talking just in the last couple decades, like huge strides have been made. But also, if you've ever read The Body Keeps the Score, that is information that they haven't integrated into the DSM. Even though there is research on it, they're actually not doing deeper research into trauma because what if that's the actual root of everything else? All of a sudden, those industries, they kind of go out of business, don't they? So we are taking our power back, right? That's literally the process that we are going through, this awakening to our power, to our light. So, light body restoration now coming in. So, this is the process of bringing your energy system, your nervous system, and your cellular biology back to their original coherent state. So, this is how essentially they were designed to function before trauma, before conditioning, before any kind of fragmentation and things got distorted on our pathway. Our soul came with particular missions. Of course, our souls incarnated knowing the depth and the magnitude of the mission at hand for this lifetime, knew that we had to be badasses to confront all this stuff. And our soul has a very specific mission that needs that trauma and that distortion to be cleared so that our signal to the environment can be pure light. So, light body restoration, yes, we are integrating codes, but it's more for the purpose, not so much of adding something new to the system, but of activating something that already existed, of restoring something to its former glory, restoring the body temple to its original blueprint is how it's coming through. So I'm getting a visual of like an old abandoned mansion that is just stunning and beautiful, but it's got cobwebs and it's starting to decay. And then somebody with love starts to restore it to its former glory. And then it becomes this incredible masterpiece of human ingenuity, of beauty, of divinity, even. And that's literally how I see this process occurring in our physical biology. So, through light body restoration, our energy system comes back into alignment. We stop leaking energy. Our cells hold more light, which is light is information, right? So, photons as packets of light information. So, that is essentially information from our higher self, coherent information that wants to be integrated. So that helps to strengthen our intuition, lessens emotional reactions. It helps the body physically heal faster as well. And we have a greater sense of clarity about our purpose and who we are, that aspect of know thyself coming in, right? Literally anchoring into our body because our biology is now able to actually receive that information and then respond to it properly without distortion. The nervous system stabilizes and expands when the light body is restored. So the body can process more without getting overwhelmed. So it's like coming out of fight or flight into a sense of safety and stability. And rather than being reactive, emotionally reactive, you become more responsive. Responsibility, the ability to respond. And then we're shifting out of that sense of fragmentation and chaos into wholeness and groundedness. So this is really one of the beautiful aspects of this journey is we become more centered, grounded, whole, and stable. That sense of inner peace really anchoring. And then your multidimensional self becomes embodied. So you become, again, more of who you are, your soul leading the way, your intuition, purpose, higher intelligence, becoming a seamless part of who you are and how you operate in the world. So you become clearer, more grounded, intuitive, sovereign, all of these beautiful magical essences that so many of us are striving to integrate. That striving doesn't exist anymore. We're naturally in the flow, right? And then to kind of bring it full circle to what I've been discussing over the last several weeks as well is the veil dissolves, that internal veil and that veil of our perception of reality. So our perception clears, projections fall away. We see truth with clarity and not distortion filters. And that connection with source is as natural as breathing and, drinking water, right? That is part of who we are at that point. So now getting into, with that as the foundation, getting into the biology of rapture itself. So we're looking at this from a very grounded lens. So it's the non-dissociated essence of rapture that we're looking at. This is biological, okay? So it becomes a process of coherence, regulation, and ecstatic parasympathetic dominance. So this essence of ecstasy anchoring in to the cells, to the cellular matrix. So when somebody enters a true, genuine, ecstatic consciousness, their body shifts into a very highly regulated, deeply coherent nervous system state. In this state, again, the vagus nerve activation is very strong. That soul nerve is basically activated and fully online. Heart rate variability increases. Oxytocin, which is that bonding chemical, right? The bonding hormone, oxytocin rises. Cortisol, which is the stress hormone, drops. Fascia becomes more fluid conductive rather than contracted. So you're literally experiencing flow state in the body. Mitochondria increase the ATP output, ATP being the energy molecule. So you have more energy, right? The gamma brain waves synchronize with the heart rhythm. So you have that heart brain coherence again. And so this isn't just some disembodied fantasy state where people are dissociating and having some kind of astral bliss experience. This is an actual measured, embodied electrical state within the body. So the physiology is experienced and witnessed in mystics during union states, in tantric ecstatic tantric experiences, in deep heart opening experiences. Advanced meditators can experience this essence of rapture. And near-death experiences can be similar to this. And then people in a spontaneous healing state, this is what activates that. So when our body is in absolute pure coherence, it can instantly heal any ill, any distortion, because that coherence and the original biological template is restored. So rapture can then be seen as the body entering a regenesis compatible field. It is a field of coherence that creates a field of healing. And so I keep thinking of Yeshua, Jesus's miraculous healings. He was able to create that field for people to transfer that coherence so that their body could enter this state of coherence for that instantaneous miraculous healing. So this is possible. You will do greater things than me. Many of us are beginning to access this state of coherence and being a direct conduit for source to become a vessel for that energy to begin to anchor into people's bodies. So people who operate as source healers, right, without that distortion, multidimensional healing, the possibility for miraculous Jesus-like healings is growing. And it is there for many people. So to kind of anchor this, rapture is really the biology of the body temple experiencing God through a state of absolute coherence. So it's the body experiencing God, really feeling that unified field within their cellular matrix, within their actual physiology. So again, to bring us a layer deeper with this, the cellular alchemy of rapture, what does it mean for the cells themselves to anchor or experience rapture? Remember that this is a felt state, not just some visualization experience. So the cells are actually experiencing that increased ionic flow. The membranes are literally more permeable to calcium, potassium, sodium. So it creates feelings of tingling, warmth, waves of energy even in the body when it's flowing at such a rate. And the mitochondrial upshift shift, as I mentioned before. The ATP release can create this literal like inner light, this inner glow. Kundalini nectar could even be, one way to look at this, that honey essence flowing. Hormonal transmutation means that the stress hormones are converting into bonding and bliss hormones like oxytocin, as I mentioned, anandamide, and so on. And then the fascia becomes more conductive. The connective tissue becomes more efficient liquid crystal matrix for that bioelectric flow. So this is how we're starting to see that connection with the light body and the actual physiology, how it actually begins to make sense. And then we can take this into the layer of epigenetics. So, epigenetics as the biological mechanism for passing on inherited, ancestral trauma, how ancestral trauma gets passed on. So, and it's not just the trauma, but yeah, it's how the environment of the cells turns genes on and off. That can be transferred from generation to generation. And so when we have this state of coherence, that coherent bliss state, it can loosen that epigenetic tightness around the DNA that causes it to shut off or to, not be activated in the correct way. So the methylation patterns associated with trauma, survival, self-protection, those begin to change. So this is how and why Rapture can literally heal the body. This state of bliss can literally heal the body because it's rewriting your biological environment. So what it can feel like is this warmth moving up the spine, this heart expansion that doesn't feel overwhelming. It's like the etheric wings of the heart beginning to activate. The jaw, the tongue, the pelvic floor can release. So a lot of people hold incredible amounts of tension in the jaw, and many are familiar with the womb and jaw connection. So a lot of women who hold trauma in both the jaw and the womb. And then the sense of inner sweetness, right? I already mentioned the honey, but we can kind of literally almost taste that essence. And, you have this sense of deep emotional safety because you know that you're held in the arms of God, that you are one with God. And some people might experience tears of joy, not tears of sadness, but tears of pure bliss, that ecstatic bliss, creating such a beautiful emotional experience. And then just this sense of wholeness, this sense of, yes, this is it. I am home. This sense of feeling finally fully at home in the body temple. So this is not the same, to be very clear, as like a, potent Kundalini activation or awakening or some kind of DMT psychedelic like high. It is a softer experience. It is more coherent in the full body system. There's a sense of wholeness to it. So, again, this is not about going up and out of the body, but this is descending light into matter. So, we're not blasting off into the astral in this form of rapture. We're actually anchoring truth, the light of truth, into our being. So, what is the esoteric component of this? So, rapture is essentially the body remembering that it is God, not metaphorically, not esoterically, but actually biologically, this cellular remembrance coming online, that DNA awakening, activating, right? So it is the rapture then is really the union of spirit and flesh. So it is that true inner union coming into form. So this is the original blueprint. This is the original template of Edenic consciousness. So when we anchor this essence and we can truly experience rapture or this state of profound coherence and oneness with the field, this is where we can return to that essence of God, goddess, right? That divine human template being reactivated, coming back online, that Christed frequency really flowing through us. And then we have the ability to do greater things than He. And that original Sophianic essence really coming into play as well, particularly for women who hold particular womb codes, templates, the Sophianic template. We activate that Sophianic field as well. So this is really what the core of embodied ascension is. And a lot of it has sounded very mystical and esoteric through the teachings, through the different lineages, so on and so forth. But at this point in time, we have the science and the biology to help integrate this wisdom into grounded practical processes and pathways for us to understand that it's truly a biological process. Because we are in individuated form now. We have a particular brain activation that has the capacity and ability to understand this in a manner that may not have been possible millennia ago when we had a little bit more of a tribal consciousness where they could access these states perhaps more readily, but they didn't have that same level of individuation. So we're in this process of collective evolution, and we're literally understanding how this process is a process of cellular transformation, anchoring the codes through our body temple. This is what it means to become the bridge for heaven onto earth, the rainbow bridge. The chakras get activated, but what is really happening is also a very deeply practical biological process of clearing out the cells of all the density, the toxicity. So this is why people experience those ascension symptoms. And certain esoteric traditions really did always teach this, but of course, most of them were suppressed, repressed, the wisdom was lost. So Christos-Sophia mysticism really did teach this. This was about the spirit descending into flesh and the flesh remembering that it is light. So, teachings that touch on the heart womb connection, bliss, ecstatic devotion, inner union. This is really what those teachings were bringing us into. They're all actually technologies for cellular transformation through creating this coherence that generates a state of bliss, a state of ecstasy, a state of rapture in the body. So it's not just like a peak experience, it is an actual biological event that teaches the body how to hold God in the cells. So, to bring this full circle, getting into that question of how do I perceive rapture, I do perceive it as a cellular mechanism of ascension. It's not necessarily the whole picture, but it is one of the engines that makes embodiment possible because it reorganizes the nervous system, the endocrine system, the fascia, the mitochondria, the heart field, and the epigenetic instructions for DNA expression itself. So the soul can then stay in the body at a higher frequency without creating friction and fragmentation and such. So I also believe that in order to experience rapture, we can work from the bottom up and work to regulate the nervous system, to get that endocrine system back into wholeness and coherence, so on and so forth, right? Create that heart coherence. Begin to heal the toxicity, the body first, so that we have the capacity to hold those light codes, right? So I'd be very curious to hear how this episode has landed for you. And by the way, my name is Amanda. I realize I got right into it without actually introducing myself. So welcome or welcome back. And if you've been with me on this journey, thank you so much for joining me along this ride. And if you're new here, welcome. We go deep into these subjects and I am here for it. So, if you would like to integrate more deeply at a practical level, I invite you to check out the Inner Temple, where there's a ton of resources to help you create this foundation for the body temple, including breath work, including luminary, the entire foundations for the process of transformation to help to anchor the codes through practical processes, and a number of other courses like Awakening Fundamentals to shore up and fill in any gaps, right? Or if you're new to the journey, well, there you go. And I am going to be adding way more activations to the inner temple. I've been sitting with this as I've been guiding the cosmic womb, and a lot of stuff has been coming up. I've also been feeling into how to restructure the inner temple for optimal, to optimize it. And I am going to be adding way more of my activations to it. And I will soon be creating 2 tiers for the inner temple. And currently, at the current price, so I'm going to raise the price basically for that tier 2, which grants access to all the activations, because activation is really a level that you need to have that foundation in place for. But what I'm going to do is add all of those activations, and everybody who accesses it at the current price, you'll maintain that pricing. And because it's a membership. And going forward, I am going to increase the price for the activation level. So people will get the foundations for the for one rate, and then the activations for another. So if you're interested in joining the Inner Temple, now is the time to do it. Think of it as kind of like I don't like to really engage in, Black Friday, but yeah, everybody's doing specials and things like that. And that wasn't even the intention, but sure, we can look at it that way. Special access during this time. And then, yes, one-on-ones, I've been getting incredible feedback for those, for people who are really, they're going deep in these sessions, and it's really such an honor to hold this space. So I do crystalline womb restoration sessions, karmic liberation, soul retrieval. It's basically soul retrieval. So talking about trauma integration, that's what I assist people with, is accessing aspects of self caught in trauma timelines and clearing out the residue of the pain and such, and soul blueprint activation sessions. So if you're curious about any of the above, please do feel free to reach out. And gosh, I can't believe 2026 is just around the corner. So in the new year, I'm going to be running, it seems like at this point in time, the cosmic womb for another round, probably most likely early February. And as if we're only like 1 week in, and it's already so potent. And I've had a couple women express interest in engaging in it, and they, weren't able to this round. So probably going to be doing that again. And I'm going to be, sharing something that's even bigger and more integrated. I mean, not more integrated, but like it is the process of integration, soul integration. And I'm very excited. So stay tuned. And I highly, highly recommend diving into the inner temple if you are new to my world, especially. It is a perfect place to begin. Again, lots of activations in there, lots of courses to help you kind of anchor into the process. And inside the inner temple, people will retain access to the one-on-one pricing, which is going up. So that's another bonus that people get. And they get reduced pricing for all of my other offers as well, special pricing. So if you've thought about it, I would love to have you. I have it's an intimate community, and I would love for that intimate community to grow and expand for more heart-centered souls to connect with us, because it really is just such an honor. The people who are in there are incredible. And yes, the inner temple, just to clarify, the inner temple and one-on-ones are open to men as well. So that's actually a whole thing that came up last week that, yeah, I got some really incredible feedback from men in my world and my circle. So welcome, one and all. And yeah, I can't wait to dive into, I am going to finally be doing some interviews in the coming episodes. So thank you for being here on this journey with me as I navigate, week by week. So much is shifting. It's wild, but it's like the upgrades, the expansion is just, it's such an honor to experience all of it, right? So, yeah, I felt really like on 11/11 last week, like, woo, activated in a good way. And, as it goes, we go through waves. It's also been intense as I've been holding the space for the cosmic womb. And yeah, what an honor that has been already. So I will leave it there, onward and upward in love and light as we journey home to the heart of truth. And I will see you in the next episode. Oh, and please, please, please like, comment, subscribe, share. It does help the podcast and the channel to grow. If you resonate, I so appreciate it. So please do share in the comments how you've been experiencing the symptoms, so on, so forth. And yes, I am here and sending you so much love. See you soon. Thank you for tuning in to the Heart of Truth podcast with your host, Amanda Erin Kelly. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating or review on your favorite platform. And if you'd like to go deeper, grab your copy of my book, Let There Be Light, and join us inside the free community in Illumina Wisdom School, where you can access free resources to jumpstart your journey, such as a higher self activation and the Body Temple Blueprint Masterclass, as well as explore the plethora of resources, including Awakening Fundamentals and Luminary, my signature path to wholeness and mastery, to help you become your own healer and sovereign authority. You can access everything at thisartcalledlife.com or find the links down in the show notes below. Until next time, onward and upward in love and light as we journey home to the heart of truth.